Well, I want to welcome you to another episode of Four Words to Transform. This is episode number 7, entitled Thrive Where You're Planted. Now, maybe you've heard a similar phrase before, like bloom where you're planted, or grow where you're planted, or perhaps even flourish where you're planted. But I wanted to use the word thrive because we're going to contrast the difference between surviving and thriving. Surviving is defined as the state or fact of continuing to live or exist, typically in spite of an accident, ordeal, or difficult circumstances. So surviving is like bare minimum. Surviving is like at the bottom rung. I'm just existing, I'm just getting by, I'm living day to day. Whereas thriving is defined as to grow vigorously, to flourish, to progress toward or realize a goal despite or because of your circumstances. So thriving is understanding that we're in the same or similar situation, but we decide to grow upon it or to flourish in spite of our surrounding circumstances. Now, perhaps a great example for this is the Apostle Paul, because many times, you may not know, but when he wrote his letters to the church, which are now comprised in the New Testament, when he wrote those many times, he was imprisoned, right? He was a prisoner in jail. Now, most of us would probably say, okay, well, I'm in jail right now, so I'm going to go on hold. I'm going to stop writing for a while. I'm going to wait for God to come and deliver me, and I'm just going to survive. I'm just going to figure out how to exist in this imprisonment that I'm in. But Paul, man, he was tough, and he said, no, even though my circumstances are here, even though my circumstances are bad, I'm not going to just survive. I'm going to thrive. I'm going to grow. I'm going to continue in the purpose that God created me for. So from prison, he wrote many of the letters that now make up the New Testament, which is just amazing. And one of those is in the book of Colossians chapter 3. I want to read when he was writing to husbands, wives, children, and even slaves. And he said this, he said, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ." To work diligently, no matter the circumstances around us. He was in prison writing this, and he was writing to husbands and wives and children, and he was writing to slaves. That no matter what we do, let us work for Christ. Let us work to thrive, to grow, to expand. When you're in a situation and you're not sure if you're in the mode of surviving or thriving, there's some things that we can do. Number one, we have to accept and face our situation. Our situation is just what it is. Our circumstances that surround us, many times we don't have a lot of power over what's going to happen, right? That's why we have to trust in God. So we have to accept and face the situation that's in front of us. Number two, we have to determine how God is moving around us. So I believe that God is always moving. He's always doing something. It's up to us as his children to hear his voice and to know what he's doing, but he's always moving. And number three, discover how God wants to use us. So he has a specific plan for each and every one of us, a way that we can further his kingdom, a way that we can work in what he's doing, no matter our circumstances. And part of thriving is hearing his voice, knowing what he's called us to do, and doing it. I want to read from Psalms chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. "Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers. But they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do." We want to be like that tree that's planted by the riverbank. Regardless of the circumstances that are there, we're strong, we're firm, and we produce fruit for others. Life is about helping other people. Life is about being an example for Christ and reaching out to those who need it, right? The two greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So no matter what circumstances you might find yourself in today, I just want to encourage you to accept where you are and that you have to face things, determine how God is moving around you, and discover how God wants to use you in your current circumstance so that you don't get stuck in surviving, but rather thriving. Thrive where you're planted.